Hello there, YouTube, and welcome to another episode of Friendly Chat About. Today we're talking about Kittywake's latest release, the next in the series of parody war games, Horseblade Heroics, our little superhero endeavour that inspired the creation of the comics division of Kitty-Wake, and also adds to a series that continues to present a playable war game that nonetheless has some good fun with some of the ridiculousness of wargaming in general. Let's take a look, shall we? First and foremost, yes, this game is under the Horseblade label, so yes, it is going to be a parody of geek culture, its attitude to sex and violence. It's all the stereotypes, really. And yes, it is a parody. I'm getting sick and tired of having to explain that, although, to be honest, I can understand the oversensitivity and the constant looking over everybody's shoulder over this issue, because there is a lot more to it than, to quote Zardos, "The penis is evil." There's more to it. No, that's not the argument at all. No, there is something to be said for how this trend of having your scantily clad female characters defined by their sexuality, which is silly, really. I was one of the many who hated slimming down Amanda Waller, who hated Harley Quinn's new costume, who hated a lot of stupidity in all comics, really, when it comes to the portrayal of female characters. Then again, I was also one of the ones who objected to the redesign of Power Girl's costume because of the fact that it's Power Girl. Power Girl was always supposed to be somewhat sort of naive about humans and their reactions to things. Although she sort of wised up to it, then it became a sort of a joke for her. So yes, I understand the issue. Yes, I am attacking it with all the subtlety of a sledgehammer, but that's just me. And trust me, when it comes to the actual comics based on these, skimpy costumes aren't going to be a regular feature. They have been overly emphasised for the purposes of this book, with Brad as the lead artist. That art of which is actually original art, as I shall go until next. Seeing as I still can't draw worth a shit, art is the responsibility of the freelancers I hire. So, although obviously I have final say on it, it's more their area of expertise than mine. I really don't like arguing with my artists at all, or even clarifying things too much, because it's a talent that I don't have, and it's a talent I really appreciate other people having, so I don't like to get too sort of interfere too much with it, and that's just how it is. As I said, Brad's done the majority of the actual commission stuff in here, the stuff that wasn't stock I purchased from RPG Now. Fully credited stock, I'll admit, but it's still stock. It is all, well, I think pretty much all the original stuff in there, apart from one Master Silverwolf and a preview of the front cover of Kitty Girl #1. It's all Brad's work, and the logos as well. Although, when I get round to doing the WTF, I've just designed a logo for them. So I may be able to get the logo designs down myself, but no promises there because I could be really crap at it. We'll just have to see. Anyhow, artwork-wise, I wanted to sort of overemphasize the silliness, the impracticality of costumes, just the downright stupidity of some of them, and there are only 2 nude shots, and they're ones that what's fast becoming the Horseblade logo, which is the human species picture from Fantasy Courtesans, basically, from Master Silverwolf, and a frozen, ice-based nude super villainess, which I thought was just silly. Because actually, I specified to Brad, I believe I said, could I have a super villainess whose powers are based around ice, whose costume is tiny? And he said, well, how about costumes non-existent? And I went, okay, that's probably funnier. Anyhow, it does take the piss. The book is indeed dedicated to Rob Liefeld, and when it comes, although obviously Brad's stuff is properly posed, which is more than you can say for Liefeld, and yeah, layout-wise, I was. This is the first gaming book I've had where I've put the proper divisions in and the proper interactive contents page on the PDF. So yeah, using the style thing, I'm probably going to have to get used to. I think I've managed to edit this one all right, although just occasionally I will spot something and I think, oh fuck, I can't change it now. But hey, that's writing for you. There's always something you've missed. And yeah, if it gets too bad, I may put some errata up, but I don't think it will. Anyhow, yeah, so art and layout wise, very pleased with how it's turned out, and I think it certainly fits the tone of what it's about. This setting, although it was made with the same sort of one joke basis of, say, 20k or the Courtesan's fantasy setting or the Courtesan's vampire setting, I think there's a great deal more fun to be had in this world. I mean, I've put the basics out there, but there's plenty more depth we can go into, and indeed I am actually now writing my own comics to go into this world, which is an interesting experience, and they won't all be adults only comics. I'm just saying that now, just as a disclaimer. Although there will be some of them, I will try and keep to a diverse crowd with the comics. As for this setting in Credit City, this world is very much parodying how American-centric comics tend to be, in that this one's very British-centric, just like I did with the Shadow World. And the what makes it even funnier is we've got pretty much all the super ladies, yes, that's my term, or stockings to use the slang term, concentrated into this one huge sprawling city called Incredi City, which is roughly where Birmingham is in our world. So basically imagine Birmingham about 5 times the size, with lots of bits and pieces added onto it and different areas, which each patrolled by a different super lady. And it all makes no sense at all, but let's move on. Yes, so I have got an entire history of this world that goes on through several ages. Yes, I know, DC piss take. The ages I will link below for the comics, in that I've named them all properly and placed them in context. And within the setting part of the book, bear in mind that is the bare basics, and some of it may change a little. I'm not saying I'm going to completely contradict anything in there, but I may change bits and pieces and expand the lore later, because obviously this was just a quick summary of this world for the purposes of setting the scene for this game. Also, when it comes to setting material, with each origin of Super Lady listed, there are 3 examples given, 1 for each of the 3 moralities. And yes, there are this is something that comes up in character creation, that is kind of there to reinforce the sort of comic book feel of the whole thing. So I think we should move on to that. Warband creation is expanding on what I did with Horseblade 20,000, only there are some more sort of rigid restrictions. You must have a lead super lady. You can have up to 2 sidekicks and 2 allies. In addition to that, you can also bring in goons. Now, goons is where I depart from the typical thing I set down in Horseblade. Goons are not characters. Characters being people with the actual 3 stats, proficiencies and special rules and things like that. Goons are just there. They've got 1 stat called competence, which does everything, and they've got usually very basic weaponry. Goons are there basically as cannon fodder, and/or they will they're there as a kind of a distraction more than anything else, and it really takes a large number of them to bring down a character, if at all. And do not be surprised if some of your goons aren't actually able to affect some really high point super ladies, because that's just perfectly in character. I mean, you're not going to get random copper number 307 shooting Superman in the head and hitting and actually killing him, are you? But so if you do actually invest in goons, which any of the 3 moralities can do, do bear in mind you need lots of them, or you need to deploy them in such a way that they are a distraction. Speaking of moralities, there are 3. I'm putting the write-up for a 4th one on the blog soon, but there are 3 in the core rulebook, and they fall into the 3 categories you see in comic books: heroes, villains, and anti-heroes. Heroes fall under the auspices of the SPO, Society to Preserve Order, who are run by the first Super Lady, Kittyweight Girl, who's a wuss and won't let her members kill anybody. So that's a big weakness, but that's balanced out by the fact that they have the backing of the best. So they're going to have quite the quite some time taking out a SPO warband. With anti-heroes, they're a group that split off under the ex-soldier grey areas. That's spelt grey as in the surname Grey. Yes, she's very bad with word association. Anyhow, we have this we have this splinter faction who do actually use lethal force, and they're more sort of like hardcore vigilante types. Think the Punisher, think Spawn, that kind of mentality, really. Black Widow in some of her worse off days. Red Hood, that sort of thing. So yeah, they're the ones that sort of in between good and evil. And then you have the outright bastards, the LEO or League of Extraordinary Outcasts. The the anti-heroes are known as the Idealistic Heroines League, and their symbol's a big gun. Yes, and then we have finally the LEO, League of Extraordinary Outcasts. League of Extraordinary Outcasts are interesting in that they are an outright society of villainous individuals, and they're varying degrees of evil, and they're all going to stab each other in the back. And plus, their weakness is called "you can't get the staff" these days, and it basically means your goons are likely not to turn up to the battle. Which can be frustrating, particularly as LEO tend to make a lot of use of goons. You may be wondering why a hero would use goons. As I see it, goons representing sort of stand trooper on the ground. So yeah, a hero, any scene, say, where Batman's got a SWAT team outside, that's Batman using goons. Or scenes like that, where they've got people on their side who they may not necessarily be affiliated with them, but they've got these people on their side as cannon fodder. Allies are interesting in that they've got these abilities called authorities that give you cost breaks and various special abilities you can use to your advantage. And oh grief. Each super lady falls into one of 6 origins. We have aliens, so that's your Supermans, your Starfires, that kind of archetype. Accidents, I fell in toxic waste. How common is that as a superhero archetype? It's ridiculous. Experiments, okay, I deliberately volunteered for a stupid experiment. I'm an idiot. You have mutants. Yes, I am going there with the whole mutants as an allegory for racism, blah blah blah, whatever, or homophobia if you take some readings of it. And then you have supernaturals, magic. A wizard did it, literally. And supernormals, which is people who have got more skill and gadgets and sense and go toe-to-toe with people who actually have superpowers. Supernormals are probably my favourites because of the fact that their special strength is that they get a gadget, they can draw random gadgets that will give them a one shot of a power they don't actually have at some point, provided the player can come up with a ridiculous gadget that is appropriate. Then their weakness, of course, is that technology is very notoriously under-reliable. We're in the future and still nothing works. It's okay, yeah. So you roll a dice every time you benefit from a gadget, and if it doesn't work, if you roll a 1, it doesn't work. Which could be good for a lot of fun gaming anecdotes. Yeah, I had this massive great cannon. I turned it on him, and then suddenly, rolled a one, bang. Yeah. So yeah, warband creation. This one's probably got a bit more skill to warband creation or super team creation, to give it its proper term in this. Because of the fact you're balancing several different elements. You're probably going to have smaller warbands. You're going to have a lower starting courage pool unless you start investing heavily on things that increase courage. So, yeah, be advised, this is going to need some tweak. You're going to need to do a lot of trial and error to get the super team that you want. To facilitate some of the superpower mechanics, I have actually changed priority in this. Priority system works by a roll-off each turn, rather than just whoever's got the highest courage at that point. I may or may not continue this in other Horseblade games. I'm not entirely sure yet. I think it will be on a case-by-case basis and what fits with the theme. In Heroics, I think it's more to do with chance because of the fact that some people have powers that manipulate chance and just generally dodge things and make a mess for everybody. Speaking of superpowers, there is a wide selection. I'm not entirely sure it's a fully comprehensive selection, but that's only because I always think I've forgotten something when I'm writing lists like this. But I may add to it in future supplements, but for the most part I think you can do pretty much anything with it. Combine it with the fact that you've got the various different origins and their abilities and how you justify them. Powers tend to be very generic in this, and how they actually work in practice is completely up to the origin story of your character, and more of a narrative concern than a system concern. So you can have two characters with the same power, but it's not the same power in story terms. An attack with rending 3 could be a stream of wire mesh shooting out of a supernormal's gauntlets. It could also be some kind of spinning psychic blade coming from a mutant. So really, I've tried to keep things as generic as possible. And I'm bound to have missed some things. I believe shapeshifters are hard to handle with this system. So for now, they aren't there, but I will get round to clarifying on the blog and maybe in a future supplement how these work. But yeah, powers were fun to work on and fun to basically break my system even more. Weapons have changed quite a bit. They are now in various split classes. Each class of weapon has a different range, has its range, and attributes work as they did before. But yeah, the problem I have with the way that weapons work is I realised that the last thing I wanted in a Supers game was everybody sitting back and shooting. Whilst in 20k this makes sense, unlike the source material, it makes sense anyway. It doesn't make sense at all in the context of superheroes. So everything gets a lot shorter range, but at the same time, everything gets something of a boost. Firearms can be a bit more useful than they would be normally, and melee weapons are further expanded, martial arts are further expanded, it's just a completely different system, and rather than give you an extensive list, I've got a create your own weapon system, which I think is probably the way I'm going to go from now on, unless something goes really wrong. I will probably provide examples, but it's so much easier to have a system by which people can create their own stuff, especially when you're talking about something as varied as superheroes and super villains. Yeah, when it comes to battle mechanics, there have been some key changes to fit the genre. There have been some key changes to make some of the system work properly within that genre, but it's more or less the same. I think it would have been remiss of me to release this book without a campaign system. And as such, I have developed a campaign system that I believe reflects more or less the genre, and also the way that people develop when they're in protracted series of fighting anyway. Unique somewhat in my system is that the way the system is the way the experience system works is that normally the way a game finishes is that the game finishes with one warband withdrawing, and by dropping to 0 courage. Now, what the campaign's experience system, or I believe it's improvement points, it's not development points, it's what it's called, development points, works, is that you have is the margin by which you win or lose, regardless of if you win or lose, is the number of development points you get. It's that simple. Each development point, I believe... It's funny because when you're reading your own work, you're thinking, which version of this is it? I've mentioned this before, but yes, it's... Each development point is 10 creation points, so basically you can replace people who are taken out, you can add powers and abilities onto existing people, and you can just generally tweak your super team using these experiences. You also have injuries. And I come up with a few ideas of how to link your games together in a campaign using sort of the standard sort of wargaming models, only with a few twists and turns here and there that should help. But then again, with my track record of running campaigns, I'm probably the worst person to be asking for said advice. In summary, yeah, this is a right rollicking romp of a superheroes game. You don't necessarily have to play it set in my setting. You can do your own superhero thing. You could use the rules for other things. But if you'd like a good Mickey take of comic book cliches, comic book tropes, well, certainly the more savoury comic book tropes, I won't go anywhere near women in fridges. But yeah, do check it out. Do have a look through and see what you think. I will be expanding on this later. Obviously, there are a lot more core books to get out before I even think about expanding on this one. I will be supporting it through the blog, though. I hope to have a link to that point in the blog as and when it comes up. Below are links to print copies, PDF copies, the roster sheet, and the miniature store. Do have a browse. Do pick up this stuff, and I'll see you next time, which I believe I will be talking about my first actual comic.